You were given a rule early: work hard. That was enough. No explanation, no nuance, no conditions, just effort. And you followed it. You showed up when it was inconvenient. You stayed when others left. You kept going when it got uncomfortable. You built your identity around it, the one who works harder than everyone else. And for a while, it worked. Results came. Progress felt measurable. Effort translated into movement. That reinforced the belief. Hard work equals success. So you trusted it, not as advice, as truth. But something started to change. Not suddenly, gradually, quietly. The same effort started producing less. The same time returned less. The same energy moved you less. You noticed it, but you didn't question the rule. You questioned yourself. Maybe you're not disciplined enough. Maybe you need more intensity. Maybe you need to sacrifice more. So you increased effort. You worked longer. You cut distractions. You removed rest. You pushed harder than before. Because that's what you were taught to do. When results drop, work harder. But nothing changed. Not in the way it used to. You were still moving, but not advancing. Still working, but not progressing. Still pushing, but not gaining ground. And that creates tension, because now effort and outcome are disconnected. You're doing more, but receiving less. That contradiction starts to break something, not your routine, your belief. Because if hard work guarantees results, and you're working hard, then the only explanation left is that you're the problem. So you push even harder, not out of clarity, out of pressure, out of fear. You tighten everything, your time, your focus, your environment. You try to eliminate every weakness because you believe effort will fix it. But effort doesn't fix direction. It amplifies it. If the direction is right, effort accelerates progress. If the direction is wrong, effort accelerates stagnation. And that's the part no one tells you. You can push relentlessly and still go nowhere. You can stay disciplined and still stay stuck. Because hard work doesn't guarantee progress. It only guarantees output. And output is not the same as movement. You weren't failing because you lacked effort. You were failing because effort was never the full answer, and you didn't know when it stopped working. There's a point where effort stops being the solution and starts becoming the problem. Not because effort is wrong, because it's limited. Hard work only works when the structure around it supports it, when direction is correct, when positioning makes sense, when effort is applied to something that can actually grow. Remove those, and effort loses power. But you don't see that. You only see one variable: work harder. So you keep applying pressure to something that has already reached its ceiling. And ceilings don't break from effort. They hold. That's why your results stall. Not because you slowed down, because you stayed the same. Same actions, same approach, same system, just more force. And force doesn't create expansion. It creates resistance. Think about it. If you repeat the same process at a higher intensity, you don't get a new outcome. You get a faster version of the same outcome. That's the trap. You believe effort creates change. But effort only amplifies what already exists. If the system is flawed, Effort scales the floor. And you don't notice it at first because you're moving, you're active, you're doing something. But movement isn't progress. Progress requires adjustment. It requires awareness. It requires stepping back and questioning what you're doing. That's the part you avoid, because stopping feels like weakness. Slowing down feels like losing. So you don't adjust. You don't rethink. You don't reposition. You just push. Harder. Longer. Heavier. And that creates a false sense of control. As long as you're working, you feel like you're doing something right. But effort without awareness is just repetition. And repetition without adjustment locks you in place. That's why hard work stops working. Not because effort fails, because you never change what effort is applied to. You stay in the same lane, the same method, the same thinking. And over time, that lane narrows. That method weakens. That thinking limits you. But you don't see the limitation. You only see the effort. So you keep pushing, even when the path is wrong, even when the system is capped, even when the return is shrinking. Because you were never taught when to stop pushing and start changing direction. If you're done living in distraction, like and subscribe. This channel exists to help you protect your attention and build something real. At first, it just feels slow. You notice the results aren't the same, but you tell yourself to stay consistent. So you keep going. You push through the resistance. You ignore the signals. You trust the process, because that's what you've been told. Stay disciplined. Stay focused. Stay committed. But something deeper starts to shift. Not in your routine, in your state. The effort starts to feel heavier, not physically, mentally. What used to feel controlled now feels forced. You still show up, but it's different. There's tension, there's friction, there's weight behind every action. And you don't understand why. Because from the outside, nothing has changed. You're still working, still disciplined, still consistent. But internally, something is breaking. Because effort without progress creates doubt. Not immediately, gradually. You start questioning yourself. Am I doing this wrong? Am I not good enough? Am I missing something? And those questions don't stay quiet. They build. They repeat. They start influencing how you move. Now every action carries pressure. Every decision feels heavier. Every step feels uncertain. You hesitate more. You second-guess more. You overthink things that used to be automatic. Because the system you trusted is no longer giving you feedback. And without feedback, effort becomes draining. You're putting in energy with no clear return. That's where burnout begins. Not from working too much, from working without progress. Because effort without movement feels like being stuck. And being stuck destroys momentum. You start slowing down, not because you want to, because your system is resisting. Your focus weakens, your consistency slips, your energy drops. And now it gets worse, because the moment you slow down, you feel like you're failing. So you try to compensate. You push harder again. You force more effort. You try to regain control. But the result stays the same. Now you're trapped. Working harder doesn't fix it. Slowing down feels like failure. So you sit in between. pushing, but going nowhere. And over time, that changes how you see yourself. You start associating effort with frustration, discipline with pressure, work with stagnation. That's dangerous, because now, the very thing that used to build you starts breaking you. Not because effort is wrong, because it's being misused. And until you see that, you'll keep repeating it, pushing harder and getting nowhere. At some point, you feel it. Something isn't right. The effort is there, the discipline is there, but the results aren't. That's the moment most people should stop and think, step back, reevaluate. But you don't. Because stopping feels wrong. It feels like weakness. It feels like quitting. So you keep going. Not because it's working, because it's familiar. You've tied your identity to effort, to discipline, to consistency. So if you stop, you feel like you're losing that identity. You feel like you're becoming something else, something weaker. So you protect it, even when it's no longer helping you. That's the loop. You mistake persistence for progress. You believe that continuing is always the right move, that pushing through is always the answer. But it's not. There's a difference between continuing forward and refusing to change direction. And most people never learn it. Because the system rewards effort. It praises hard work. It glorifies grind. So you double down on it. Even when it stops making sense. You ignore signals. You dismiss friction. You push through resistance without asking why it's there. Because questioning the path feels more uncomfortable than continuing it. Changing direction means admitting something, that what you've been doing might not be right. And that's difficult, because it forces you to confront time, energy, effort already spent. You don't want to feel like it was wasted, so you keep investing into it, even when the return is gone. That's how people stay stuck. Not because they don't work, because they don't adjust. They stay locked into the same actions, the same structure, the same thinking, just with more force. And force doesn't create change. Awareness does. But awareness requires something you avoid. Stillness. Space to think. Space to question. Space to step back. And you don't give yourself that. Because you're always moving, always doing, always pushing. So the pattern repeats. Effort. Stagnation. More effort. And no change. Not because you can't break it, because you won't stop long enough to see it. The answer was never to stop working. It was to stop working blindly. Effort isn't the problem. Misplaced effort is. You were taught to push, but never taught when to pause. Never taught when to question. Never taught when to change. So you kept applying force without direction. And direction is what creates progress, not effort alone. The moment you stop and actually look, everything changes. You start seeing patterns, what's working, what isn't, where you're wasting energy. You start removing what doesn't matter. You start refining what does. That's where real progress begins. Not when you do more, when you do better. When your effort becomes precise. When your actions align with outcomes. When movement finally becomes progress. Now the same effort starts producing again. Not because you increased it, because you directed it. That's the shift from force to awareness, from pushing harder to moving smarter. That's what replaces blind hard work. And once you see it, you can't go back. Because now you understand hard work was never enough. It just felt like it was. And that's why it stopped working. Like the video, subscribe, and continue with intention.